war never changes, but the way we fight it does. And in Minecraft's most scientifically accurate mod pack, there are a plethora of different ways to wage this war, from poisonous gases to ballistic missiles to even a big fucking gun. War is inevitable in this world. And now the question might arise, but who are you fighting? It's these guys. They're the remnants of an old society with 0-point module level technology. But there is something they lack that I have: innovation. That's why I must improve my weaponry from a rickety double barrel to a high-grade pristine shotgun, and from a shantytown revolver to a 9mm spewing pistol. But my fingers are too clumsy to make the intricate parts for these guns, which is where I need a new machine, a weapons factory. But first, there are some proprietary steps I need to do prior. Firstly, my power issue. Running multiple machines off of one steam generator, which can barely support one machine alone, is pretty annoying. But there's a solution to this issue: the large steam turbine. This multi-block eats up steam and spews out up to an amp of HV power, which alone can support up to 16 machines. This energy is stored in a battery buffer for future use. I'll need these charged batteries for the sheer amount of machines I'll need to make for fighting against the Federation. Off camera, I made a fluid compressor, decompressor, solidifier, and a cutter, all with its own important use I don't have enough time to explain. Also, now is a good time to start making cheaper circuits, since they can be a pain to make, although I probably should have made this before I made those machines, but whatever. I made some good circuit boards, some diodes, and 9 expensive circuits to make an LV assembler. Now that my circuit crafting woes are gone, I finally have the circuits for a weapons factory. In this little box of wonders, I made a combat shotgun, a pistol, and some grenades. Being strapped to the gills now, I bottled some squished air into a canister, which finally enables the steam armor I made back in episode 3, giving me increased speed, resistance, and jump height. After all of this war prep, I was finally equipped to rid this world of this parasitic plague known as communism. Yeah, so as it turns out, when I pussied out, turned on peaceful last episode, I messed with how the bandits and soldiers spawn, meaning I unintentionally wiped out a civilization with the power of ones and zeros. But this didn't feel right, shamelessly taking their things without a sense of victory or valor. It would quite literally be cheating in its most concise form. So instead of waiting for a new wave of bandits to spawn in, I went to actually raid a swarmed communist encampment, this time with a helipad. That went well. They had an absolute metric fuck ton of useful resources for LV machines, as well as some yummy microplastics for my enjoyment. Also, I should mention, I did void the AE2 stuff I found in the military fort I got killed at last episode, because there were no more soldiers to defend that precious loot. But that small raid took about a day, plenty of time for the bandit camp to reform. Now I think it's an appropriate time to raid this film. My spoils of war are growing faster than Venezuelan inflation. Bringing my stuff back, I had nearly a full row of backpacks, all packed with stuff. While I am giddy about all of this loot, returning back I had this nagging thought. It is not an accomplishment to not only defeat your opponent in the art of war, but rather defeat them and progress farther than them. For that shows that the winners are truly the winners, if they can use that victory to push their own group's status in some form. What am I talking about? I'm making aluminum next. That's what I'm trying to get at with this yap session. To begin, I needed to make a large electrolytic machine, which basically shocks molecules into more simpler compounds, or their base elements. Done. I also needed the main ore, which will be turned into aluminum. bauxite, and I also need some fluorite, but that's not too important. While those are being processed into dust, I made a bubble column reactor, which is a machine that pumps gases into a liquid medium, which cheaply and effectively creates new chemicals. I also needed a roaster, distiller, crystallizer, batch reactor, centrifuge, normal electrolyzer, and an electric blast furnace. And now for the actual explanatory part of the video. If your brain easily melts when confronted with science, skip here to see the finished product. But before I start yapping, I'd like to thank Science Demon on the Supersymmetry Discord for sharing their aluminum lined flowchart. Okay, so firstly we need to split an equal part of salt water and normal water in the electrolytic machine to split into chloride and hydrogen gases, diluted salt water, and sodium hydroxide solution. I'd recommend making a bunch of batches because you'll need a lot of sodium hydroxide solution. While waiting for the special basic solution, combine some fluorite with some spicy sulfuric acid to make hydrogen fluoride with some calcium sulfate as a byproduct. Take some of this solution and bubble react it with some water to get hydrofluoric acid. Now to finally process the bauxite, smoke this joint with sodium hydroxide solution in a roaster to make impure sodium aluminate solution, which is then centrifuged to split the main solution from the red mud, a residue caused by bauxite processing. Collect the main solution and add it along with water and simple CO2 in a crystallizer to make aluminum hydroxide and impure soda ash solution, which can be disposed of how you want. The aluminum hydroxide is used as a catalyst to then crystallize the normal sodium aluminate solution in water into impure sodium hydroxide solution and aluminum hydroxide. The ISH solution can be electrolyzed with a steel rod and a graphite electrode to make normal sodium hydroxide solution with a chance to give gallium as a byproduct. Very nice. The aluminum hydroxide is then processed in an EBF to split off a water molecule in the form of steam to get alumina dust. Use 20 of these alumina dusts and roast them with the previously made hydrofluoric acid to make aluminum trifluoride. Then bubble react some more of the hydrogen fluoride gas in sodium hydroxide solution to make sodium fluoride solution. Distill that solution, then roast that sodium fluoride dust with some of the aluminum trifluoride dust to make cryolite dust, which is then extracted to get its liquid variant. This liquid cryolite is then used as a catalyst in the electrolytic cell along with 4 more aluminum trifluoride dust. Finally, add some more alumina and carbon into the big steel shocking station to make 4 aluminum ingots and some CO2 in the process. Now you might be thinking, how are ingots produced in the electrolytic process? Or why not just smelt some aluminum dust in an EBF? Well, this process is dubbed the Hall-Héroult process, which is a nearly identical process to the supersymmetry version. Although the alumina should be melted in order for the molecule to conduct more electricity, but its melting point is so high it is highly unlikely for an LV extractor to melt it, being around 3250 Kelvin. In comparison, cryolite's melting point is only 1285 Kelvin, less than half of alumina's. After the reaction is completed, the aluminum metal sinks to the bottom, which is protected from any other outside reactants by the chemically inert cryolite slushy. Amidst this wonderful chemistry, the Hall-Héroult process is said to use an astronomical amount of power to run. So much so, around 20 to 30% of Australia's energy supply is used for this process. The process also produces a lot of CO2 and other nasty byproducts in real life, due to the carbon being used as a kind of cathode in the reaction, which is annoyingly dumped into the environment, which can cause air pollution and other environmental dangers. But side tangent aside, these 4 ingots took me over an hour to make, so automating this process would be amazing. Oh, and before I go into this montage, I made a floor for automation, with each side dedicated to a specific kind of automation. But now it's time for the montage. And that's the automation of aluminum electrolysis. To quickly re-explain this process, the bauxite is roasted with sodium hydroxide to make impure sodium aluminate solution, which is then centrifuged to remove the red mud gunk, also known as bauxite residue. The cleaned solution goes into a batch reactor which gets crystallized with water in the presence of aluminum hydroxide to make more of the aluminum hydroxide and some impure sodium hydroxide solution. The solution is then electrolyzed with a steel rod and graphite electrode to purify the solution, which is sent back to the roaster. There's also a trace chance of gallium being produced, which is just sent to this chest. The produced aluminum hydroxide is sent to this EBF to take a quick sauna session. After that session, they end up looking like Randall's assistant after being tricked by Wazowski. Fun fact, this process of making alumina is known as the Bayer process. But anyways, after the alumina sees themselves in the mirror, they end up going to the electrolytic surgeon, which tells them to buy their all-exclusive super hot cryolite carbon bundle. After this process, they come out looking like Navis from Avatar, with them accidentally shitting out CO2 while under cryolite anesthesia. Simple, very simple. And speaking of automation, there are a bunch of things I need to automate. From my first bit of polyethylene to the sheer amount of steel and carbon I will need going forward. And not to mention the new ever-looming threat that is the Federation breathing down my neck. But that is the reason I will continue to advance, to not only beat them, but to mock them for their hubris. But anyways, hope you all have a good morning, noon, and night. Bye guys.
Chicken jockey!